Some of the commissioners were more like activists. They'd never really run anything or done anything. Where high school students get all the leaded cartridges because they buy their cartridges not from dispensaries, but from the internet. Making a safe commercial cannabis industry is making something that never existed before. There is no consumer protection right now in cannabis. Whose full-time job is protecting consumers.
2 weeks in a hospital bed from a bad vape turned Jeff Rawson into a safety hawk, and bringing Delta 8 into his Harvard lab got him expelled. I'm Jason Reposa. After 25 years in tech and cannabis, I host High Functioning to show what actually works. Jeff is a chemist and founder of the Institute of Cannabis Science, built to protect consumers in the spirit of Consumer Reports. In this episode, Jeff says there is a huge regulatory capture problem in cannabis. He describes deference to certain companies and retaliation dynamics he's written about.
We're just wishing, right, that maybe this is going to work, right, without ever checking the end result, ever?
I understand.
That's not how anything has ever been done.
This one is a firestorm. Jeff is not pulling punches. The opinions of this episode are Jeff's and have not been independently verified, but I'm along for the ride. So let's dive in.
My name is Jeff. I'm a chemist, and I founded the Institute of Cannabis Science to protect consumers.
I love it. So wait a second. You're a trained chemist.
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. You went, where'd you go to school for that?
Yeah, I have a PhD from Duke University.
Do you go by doctor?
I
In
got
academic sense?
that is like a technical title that I am allowed to put in front of my name. And sometimes I use that title. Sometimes I use the prefix if I book like a airline flight or something like that, just to like flatter myself for a second and see my name as Dr. Jeff. But like otherwise, like pretty much not. Like I really don't.
So ICS is about consumer safety, right? So, but like, what led you to even found something like this? Did you see like a big gap in the market? You were like, there's no science being done or something like that? Like,
Yeah, I mean, that actually is exactly it. There is no consumer protection right now in cannabis.
what do you mean by that?
I mean that there is nobody whose full-time job is protecting consumers.
Oh, you don't think the CCC has a role in that? What are they?
No, I think the CCC protects licensees,
Ah, interesting. Yeah.
right, and runs the business.
Right. So they're more business focused then.
Yeah. So there's always been challenges of consumer protection, and historically, the people who have filled those gaps have tended to be highly motivated engineers, scientists, lawyers, and journalists who actually, like, it's often like kind of putting a fair amount of pressure on government and businesses, and sometimes even facing retaliation. That's what real consumer protection is.
And that's that's because they feel a duty to kind of like do it because does yours stem from the fact that like you see a lot of things like wrong and you're trying to correct things?
And it's really important to point out this isn't like a cannabis thing.
Yeah.
Like, all of this has happened before, and all of this will happen again. It's a universal problem, or it's just a universal challenge that always happens. Because our marketplaces for other consumer goods are mature, institutions have been developed that protect consumers in them, right? So, so we have we have a Massachusetts state office that even sends people to the gas station and the grocery store and checks that the scale really weighs a pound and that the pump really pumps a gallon.
Is there an organization? Is there an organization or a regulatory body or independent or government that you look to be like, oh, this is kind of like the path that we're kind of heading down?
Let's see. Well, the Cannabis Control Commission in Massachusetts, and I suspect that like cannabis regulatory bodies in other states, they really struggle with the fact that it's a whole new thing that was created really fast. And, there was probably like at the time that they started, there wasn't any such thing as commercial cannabis. So that means there wasn't really anybody who was an expert in any of this.
Right. I feel like that's one of the biggest criticisms is that like it was founded by people who, or regulated the original set of commissioners and stuff like that, nobody really knew much about it.
Well,
right?
a lot of the people that they hired and some of the commissioners were more like activists, but they'd never really run anything or done anything.
Right.
So like it's a different skill set, I think. So and some of that passion of activism can actually like cloud your eyes to the hard work that you got to do now. Like the biggest problem I see, and I know this is, I hope this isn't the wrong podcast to say this, but like the biggest problem that I see actually is like when I and some of my friends have started calling it kumbaya cannabis. All right. It's this idea that we're all going to found businesses in this frothy startup industry. And and we're all going to be competing against each other, but somehow we're all going to be friends. None of our businesses is ever going to fail, right? Nobody's going to close, right? And all these business owners are going to be great people who are never going to exploit anyone, right?
Right.
And they're going to work with the regulators really closely, right? And make sure that all the regulations are done just right so that everything goes perfectly, right? And that's basically kind of what we've seen happen as we see, like I go to the Massachusetts legislature, I sit before the Joint Committee on Cannabis Policy, and I see me and 90 business owners, right?
You're the only independent there.
Yeah. I'm not the only one, but definitely a super minority and the only one there just for stoners.
Right.
So, like it sounds really good at first. It's like, oh yeah, all these nice business. I mean, I meet lots of people in the industry, a lot of great people, right? And wonderful people. You want them all around. You want all their businesses to stay open, right? And they're talking to the regulators, telling them what the problems are, right? And this all sounds like perfect, right? But you know what that is actually, that sounds to me like a conspiracy to defraud consumers.
Mm-hmm. It's like that collusion.
Yeah.
Like, hey, let's all get on the same page to make more money.
Yeah.
And
Because and I don't see much evidence that consumer interests are even like considered on a daily basis.
Yeah.
I see sometimes a few words from our regulators mentioning consumers, but like just as maybe like one example, like recently Assured Testing Labs, right, had an enforcement action, right? And as
part of a substantial one as well.
Yeah. And as part of that enforcement action, a bunch of batches of cannabis were found to be fraudulently passed and contributing to products that were still on the market, right? So did the Cannabis Control Commission show that they cared about consumers by publishing an easy-to-read list of all the affected products with brand names, names of stores, and pictures of packaging? No, they did not.
They did release something, though, right?
What they did was they released an Arcane spreadsheet that it took me hours to analyze and identify all the companies, right? And it was clear that the intention of that spreadsheet, right, it didn't include the brand names. It didn't include the names of stores. It didn't. Yeah, in many cases, you couldn't name the stores from it. I still am not able to name the stores from that spreadsheet.
Do you have named any of them? Have you?
But I've named lots of the
couple of them.
But I've named lots of the
brands.
Brands.
Oh, that's so.
And of course, right? Who were the brands that got lots of fraudulently passed batches?
Right.
Are they a bunch of little mom and pops?
Oh, interesting.
Right. It's all the biggest brands, right?
Oh, that's wild.
So see, the CCC was more concerned about protecting the reputations of these fraudulent companies who passed off and sold their moldy weed to consumers.
Right.
Right. They're more concerned about protecting their reputations than they are about making sure a consumer can actually avoid smoking the weed.
Yeah, I love this conversation because I do feel like, because Commissioner Roy was on the pod at one point.
Yeah.
In the early days of the pod, and she did say that, like, she actually was the first person I ever heard actually say the word fraud.
Yeah.
When it came to these things, right? So I feel like the commissioners, at least Commissioner Roy, in my experience, and I've had some conversations with Commissioner Stebbins, regarding the lab stuff, but mostly it's Commissioner Roy that it's kind of been spearheading that stuff, and she is the one who's saying fraud, fraud, fraud. But you're saying they didn't go far enough when they released it, because you would have liked to have seen the brands and the dispensaries.
That's really, yeah. And actually, I mean, they have a choice. Those fields are in the spreadsheet,
Right.
right? They scrubbed that out before they released it.
Right. They didn't release all the data.
Yeah. So they didn't tell us everything. They didn't tell us the most easy to recognize information.
And so if you were able to do that, then I guess how would you think that's just for consumer protection, consumer safety, I should say, that is just in the best interest of the consumer?
Yeah.
Or were you planning to do something with the list if you could identify everybody?
No, I think it's important. It's important for the sake of the consumer.
Right.
Because consumers, I thought the point of the testing program, and it was to keep people from smoking the moldy weed.
Right.
I thought that was why we did
That's
it, right?
Right.
So if you say, hey, we found all this fraud, and by identifying this fraud, we're making cannabis safer, then you get rid of the moldy weed. But you leave the moldy weed out there.
It was out there for a minute.
And it was obviously everything was for show. No, there was no recall. It was a list published. Yeah,
It's important. It's up to the license holders to recall it or not, kind of thing.
It's up to the license holders to do nothing if they want.
Right.
So,
that seems counterintuitive.
Yeah. So this is a big problem, right? So here's how, in almost every other marketplace that we have for consumer products, we don't do batch testing to release products for sale. All right. We actually have a totally different safety system for that stuff.
Okay.
All right.
Because we test every batch that we put.
Right. Because you're a responsible company.
Okay.
Or at least you're responsible with that. I mean, I don't know everything about you
guys. Of course.
Yeah. But right. But yeah. And you're smart, right? And you don't want the bullshit of putting out a bad batch, right?
Right.
So, but the problem is most of these companies aren't mature and professional.
But I think in the regulations, you're supposed to test every batch, but you're saying there's some license holders that don't.
Yeah. No. What I'm saying is actually for products that aren't cannabis, we actually have kind of a different safety system. It's more like putting more of the responsibility actually on the companies.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. See, that was usually companies test for themselves, right? I think it's weird to make something. I think it's weird to make something if you're not measuring it to find out how well you did at the end. I can't imagine doing that as a chemist. I can't imagine doing a chemical reaction and then just saying, well, it turned red like it was supposed to. I did it.
Yeah. But wait a second, are you talking about non-cannabinoid kind of material as well then?
Yeah. So
give me an example.
So look, here's an example. All right. Goodyear puts out a batch of tires, right? And they realize that there was some problem and the treads sometimes come off, right? I'm paraphrasing a real story.
Okay.
Right. 20 years ago, 25 years ago. All right. So at some point, right, the problem is identified. They realize what batches were affected. They conduct a recall. They contact people who bought the tires, right? And they advertise it, right? It's on the national news that Goodyear's having a big recall of tires, right? Anybody with Goodyear tires can go in and get a brand new set of Goodyear tires.
Right.
Okay. That's important. It's important that the responsibility is on the company.
Right.
Okay. Because that's their motivation to not put out more shitty tires and kill us.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
you hear about recalls all the time.
Yeah. So what they should have done is force some of these big cannabis companies that were getting lots of batches of weed fraudulently passed by this testing lab to take responsibility and say that was we are conducting a recall, right? They have to do it's supposed to be the company's responsibility. There's supposed to be a whole system set up for this. They're supposed to spend their money. It's supposed to cost them money when they make a mistake like that.
Right.
Otherwise, where's the incentive to do a good job?
Right. Exactly. So taking one step out of the lab testing side of it real quick is I want to dive into a few other topics. We're going to get back to that in a second.
That's fine.
So your motivations come from consumer safety, or you Like, where does that come from? Were you hurt in a past life situation? Like, how does a person even want? Are you just so opinionated?
I was just actually always this kind of person. So
Okay, that's what I was getting to. It's like, how do you become this person?
I mean, I was always this kind of person, who like kind of identifies problems. I always uh, wanted to stand up to bullies and protect weak people. But I'm a chemist. I was a postdoc in a research group at Harvard in chemistry. And in 2019, I lived in Cambridge, went to Harvard. I was at Harvard and working there. And Cambridge had not allowed any dispensaries to open in the city limits because they were holding out for a social equity dispensary to be the first retail in Cambridge. So I ordered e-cig cartridges online, and someone brought them to the parking lot in the back of my building, right? And that was like way more convenient than like going across the river to like Netta in Alston or whatever, right? Like,
E-cigs, you mean just vapes?
okay, yes, I like cannabis cartridges, yeah, right. Well, it turned out that someone had been diluting those cartridges with a whole bunch of vitamin E acetate.
Right, that was vape game.
And so I got really sick, and I spent 2 weeks in Mount Auburn Hospital. And I decided that, like I do come from like I have a lot of background in safety culture. I was always like the safety officer for all my research groups. And a big part of that is accountability and like sort of after action reports in a way, right? So I wrote this op-ed about my experience of getting sick from e-cigs to like, like warn other people and just let people know like this is what can happen. Right. Yeah. And I published it in the Boston Globe. And my research advisor at Harvard, who had never been impressed with anything I had done ever and was really kind of disappointed in me, he read that op-ed, and he's like he was very critical of writing, but he said, that was really well written. That was really good, right? And it's like it's like the highest, it's basically like the best compliment he can give someone. So I went from like that to that, but then like he would only talk to me about e-cigs and cannabis. And it turned out he's really interested in all this like new, like, cause he's interested in whatever's new. Like he's a real scientist, So he's like, hey, there's a lot of interesting stuff there. And that kind of, and he could see right away, like, oh yeah, there's no consumer protection there.
Yeah.
There's just nothing at all. It's like the Wild West.
Right.
Right. And so he kind of like, eventually, like I realized that was kind of my project.
So that kind of just shifted your life right there to be like, okay, this might go that.
Yeah. And I was like, all right, I guess this is what I do.
What you were doing before that, you were like heading, because postdocs.
And like, so postdoc is like your final apprenticeship, right?
Right.
But I was kind of having like, what you're supposed to do then, if you're like me and you wanted to be a professor, then what you're supposed to do is apply to a whole bunch of universities,
right,
for faculty positions and try to get a job as an assistant professor.
Mm-hmm.
That's like the lowest rank. They call it assistant, but I mean, you're not assisting anybody. You're it's just a dumb name, They usually abbreviate to ass professor, which like kind of helps you understand why the tie stuck around for so long.
Right.
So, but like I was having a hard time like with that step. I think
did you figure like what was your mindset like? Were you like, I'm destined for something bigger, or I want to
really this is like interesting to look back on, because now I realize how hung up I was. And I had a weird perspective. First of all, I had this perspective that like actually getting that job is like as hard as winning the lottery. Right. And I had this feeling that I had to do something so incredible over the top to get it. And I don't really know where that came from. It's just some kind of a weird over specificity. And but the problem was that I'd really stopped being passionate about what I was doing every day, because I was trying to get someplace, like I was trying to do something awesome to get someplace else. Right. And once I started doing the cannabis e-cig research, like I got really dug into it eventually, got really excited, passionate about it. And I started focusing on that again. And the weird thing was that my advisor there, like somehow, like this is a very senior scientist, and this is like this is a ridiculous research group to be in. Like it's weird. It's weird that I got it, it's weird that I ever was there. Because this was like one of these very famous scientists who gets like his lab is only postdocs. Like he doesn't have graduate students. He's not giving away PhDs anymore. Like he's not even really teaching. He's only mentoring like nearly finished scientists, basically, is the only thing he's doing. And his lab has like 40 of them. And so it's like a Shark Tank, and you're all like competing all the time,
really?
right?
Kind of like how the cannabis industry kumbaya side would know.
And so like
That's not like that. It's
and so like that would like and I was not cut out for that. I was not made for that at all. So
because
it's just way over my head.
people like cutting each other off a little bit, or was it?
Yeah, like people ripped off projects from each other and like stabbed each other in the back and all kinds of stuff. Like, yeah,
That's wild.
yeah.
So that's when you get to the higher ends of that academic.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is as you go up the sort of rankings,
Yeah.
right? Like a few things change. You meet more people who are really deeply passionate and brilliant at what they do,
Mhm.
but you also start meeting more people who are just climbers and rankings chasers, and they're crazy. And once you get to a place like Harvard, you start seeing like it's like a really rare species, but they're people with just apparently superhuman gifts of like social gifts. I mean,
Social gifts.
so yeah, people who are so skillful in social situations and so clever and like
Do you find yourself out in that boat?
I was the exact opposite, right? I was like the quiet observer who watched everybody, you know, like, and I mean, I can speak up in a group. Like, I mean, I've been in science for long enough. Like, you have to speak up, but
You have the ability to speak up. I
but
think
like,
that's
but like, but I mean, I was totally bamboozled by that. I mean, the way that people would like could get ahead by just like they just run to the like some people could develop this relationship with our boss where they could just run up to him in the hall and show him a video on their phone. Like, look at this thing I made that was so cool. Like, and that would just work sometimes. And it made me nuts.
yeah.
Like it felt like there was no rules.
Right.
Each person had a totally different relationship with the boss and thought that their way was like the perfect
Way how
way.
you say boss. This is a professor.
Yeah. But oh no, but you could really feel it, like that he was the boss. I mean, like, and he was so. I don't know. This. It's so weird how this is like he was so powerful because he'd been a professor for 50 years, and so like like almost every chemistry department in America has someone who worked for him at one time or another.
Right. Because he has 40 postdocs at all times.
Oh, yeah. And they all go, and like a lot of his people go to top places. So, so like I mean, and I mean, his research group had been so productive with intellectual property that in total, I think he had brought, someone told me that that his patents had brought Harvard more than $1 billion.
Yeah.
So,
I was going to say there's a lot of money in that.
yeah, and he was on boards of large corporations. Like, he's a very influential, like powerful person.
So it's a boss at that point. It's like you want to make the boss happy.
Yeah. And I didn't get it at all. The thing that was weird about that is like with all of that and all the power politics around, like he also was still a mentor, and somehow he could see. He knew I wasn't going to get assistant professor. He knew I wasn't going to go that way. I don't know what it was about me that he saw.
He never said it.
Nobody told me.
He told you you weren't going to get it.
He told me maybe you could go to assistant professor, but I think what's going to happen with you is you're going to go to industry first, and then maybe you'll be a professor.
Interesting.
And now here I am, and like I'm a nonprofit founder,
Right.
and
Right.
like I am. And I'm doing something entrepreneurial, and I'm finding my way forward, and it passed for me way better.
Yeah, exactly.
So somehow he could see something. even with all the distractions and the fact that half the time he couldn't remember, like it took him 6 months to be able to like recall my name when he saw me, right? But somehow he knew who I was and knew more about me in some ways than I did.
Wow.
So because seen it so many times, exactly. He's seen so many. Well, he'd seen so many people the way they are, so he could all like. So he actually he pushed me in the direction that was going to work for me,
Yeah.
even though at the time I didn't think that was what I wanted. Or
Because you were looking to be ass professor.
yeah. So I thought I had this one path in modeling that you're supposed to do, right, which is dumb, right? So
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing is that, like I said, I think the he kind of like unlocked that door to say like, here's a new path potentially.
yeah. I mean,
But
yeah, like I mean, I had been doing research for a long time. I mean, I've had a you're gonna need another episode to go through. All the ups and downs that like got me to being a 40-year-old postdoc at Harvard. But like,
what I was gonna say though is like, think about this though. When you think about that door opening, you kind of walk through that door, and then now this kind of different role is in front of you. You chose consumer safety. Was that because you had that issue, that episode?
yeah, I had the experience, so it inspired me.
Right, exactly.
But I'd always been
The safety for.
I'd always been interested in that, and I was like, I had like the chemistry that I had done before I went to Harvard was all it was all like very esoteric. It was hard to explain the point to anybody who wasn't a chemist.
Right.
When I published a paper, like it was pretty niche, so it's like pretty narrow.
So
Read by a lot of people.
like I'm fine.
And so I had been like, well, I basically was studying, I was making like kind of test systems and stunt molecules to study quantum mechanics
Right.
and study where electrons go in molecules. So
Fun.
it was super fun, super interesting. But like there was this point I reached where I was like, I am really not changing people's lives.
Yeah.
And I'm working awful hard at this.
Yeah.
And I even started realizing that actually, like, I mean, this might sound weird, but there's some kinds of scientific research that's like, it's more about satisfying your own curiosity and your own like joy in doing pointless puzzles than it is like solving a real problem that people actually have,
Right.
and like,
But
when I realized that like I was in danger of falling down that rabbit hole and spending my life doing stuff that I would feel was pointless afterwards. And so like I was looking to shift to something that might be like kind of public health connected, or some kind of area of research that would impact people's lives a little more.
How long did it take you to found ICS after that episode with writing?
Oh, it was a few years. So
What did you do in between? You just
yeah, well, so it was COVID,
Mm.
and so
Yeah, vapes were huge in COVID.
yeah,
Might pick up a storm during COVID.
yeah, right. And it was COVID, and so like a lot of academia was sort of on ice for a while. I mean, we couldn't even go to the lab for a few months, right? And then we could go there like 2 days a week. Like it was so
Mess.
so and so it was. I mean, that I think was also like a big part of my challenge in figuring out where to go with my career. Is like, well, I haven't really completed an accomplishment yet with this boss, right? So how am I going to move on to the next job, right? Like.
And then you're
sitting there, it dudes me, and then like I mean, he'd had my boss had a minor stroke, so he was declining, and we're like, iced out of the lab half the time. I was like, what the, for a couple of years, I was just like, what the fuck am I gonna do? But I was studying these e-cig cartridges, and I learned that a whole bunch of the cartridges the cartridges, like little bits of metal, like in those cartridges, they're almost always made out of brass. And the reason is because you can manufacture it when you need those fine features, you make it by subtractive manufacturing. So you start with a rod and you etch away
everything else.
and it's a computerized machine that goes around, and they look really cool if you watch videos of them on YouTube.
Brass is easy to cut.
Yeah. But it's the easiest metal in the world. So there's a particular alloy of brass called free machining brass that is the definition of the easiest to machine metal. And the thing that makes it free machining is 3% by mass lead. So lots of e-cig carts were made out of leaded brass, and the lead leaches out into the oil. All right. So I learned all about the manufacturing. Like when you work for a really famous scientist, it turns out what he makes you do is like every single step, you've got to research it like to the nines. So like I learned everything about manufacturing in China. I talked to people who had overseen contracting manufacturing in China, talked to them about the challenges of sourcing clean materials and avoiding child labor. Learned all about these CNC lathes that do the machining, learned the physics and the microstructure of the metal, and I figured out that you could just take any e-cig cart, even a full one, and you can scan it for about 30 seconds with a portable X-ray fluorimeter and find out if it has lead in it.
Mm.
And so I used that. I got a bunch of e-cig carts from dispensaries, and then I got a bunch of e-cig carts that had been confiscated in local high schools. I showed that the high school students get all the leaded cartridges because they buy their cartridges not from dispensaries,
Right.
but from the internet,
Right.
where people use the cheapest carts.
But do you think that the dispensaries even know that level of the materials that were made?
No,
there?
nobody understands any of this, right?
Right.
And people look at me, well, like, why are you studying all this metallurgy? You're an organic chemist. It's like, well, that's my job now, right? Like,
Right.
if you want to understand the thing, right? And so, like, it's when you understand why it's always going to be used, right? Because it's the best metal in the world.
Right.
So, like, it's then cheap.
If you're into cannabis, entrepreneurship, or just like hearing from people who actually build things, check out High Functioning. It's real talk with founders, operators, and big thinkers. No fluff, just game. New episodes drop every Friday, and you can subscribe and listen at highfunctioning.show. All right, let's get back to the show. It's so cheap. It's easy to manufacture. All those other things, those economic benefits are there.
It's always gonna be a threat to like to kind of push into your market, right? It's always gonna be an economic kind of pressure.
It's economic pressures everywhere, of course. And like cannabis, which has price compression on top of it, everybody's looking for the next deal for their packaging materials and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But would you consider yourself a stoner?
I mean, I guess so, yeah.
Were you consuming it while you were at Harvard did it make you more creative, or
No.
did it just relax you because you were so stressed out at Harvard or something?
No, it was avoidance. I had very unhealthy use at that time. It was avoidance. So yeah, that's the challenge. Like, I mean, yeah, I mean, sure. Like, I mean, we enjoy. I mean, we enjoy cannabis, but sometimes, right? Like getting high can just be a way to like avoid your problems, man, and like not do the stuff you're supposed to do.
Right.
So
But that was due to the fact that you had all this expectations built up.
yeah. I felt all this pressure.
Yeah.
I didn't really. I mean, at that point, like, especially once COVID hit, then you just felt like you're really off the map. It's like, no, like, we don't, I mean, nobody knows, right? And this weird situation of working for an extremely powerful and important scientist who is declining and concealing that decline to keep his power, right? And keep from getting pushed out of his department, right? Like,
That he'd been for 50 years.
yeah.
So going back into the actual safety side of it,
Yeah.
is that still a problem, lead in vape carts?
I think it's a lot less.
But what happened? What changed?
People get more companies got worried about it and started asking questions. C-Cell is the biggest manufacturer still of cartridges, and they stopped using leaded brass in 2018 or 19. So I found out
they're clean.
I found a sourcing document that showed that they used to use leaded brass, but they've been using bismuth brass. This is like one of the most fun little periodic table like chemistry tricks. Is bismuth and lead are right next to each other on a periodic table,
Yeah.
and lead is incredibly harmful and toxic, and bismuth is harmless. But So otherwise, like, kind of have some similar properties. So they're way down at the bottom. They're both these soft, heavy metals.
Yeah.
And so, like, you can substitute the bismuth for the lead. It works almost as well. It's not as good as free machining, but I learned all about that too. And this was like, actually, this was my final piece of inspirations, because, like, for a couple of years I was just doing research at Harvard, but still thinking maybe I'm going to be a chemistry professor, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while I was doing all that research on lead, I learned about this time in around 89 and 90 when all these patents started getting filed for alternatives to leaded brass, right? I started coming across all these patents for the bismuth brass, right? And I noticed, they're all like around this time, right? What happened then? Well, Congress passed a law banning lead in pipes and in plumbing fittings. Because again, right, like, any little arbitrarily shaped piece of brass is made by subtractive manufacturing, right? And so all of our plumbing, everything had leaded pipes, right? Like all those brass fittings, every little thing, right? If you've ever done any plumbing, right? Everything, there's all these little brass fittings and stuff, right? Those are all machined from leaded brass, right?
Right.
So what happened is, so I was like, why they passed that law? Right. Well, what happened was, for 20 years, this crazy scientist, this pediatrician, did research studies demonstrating a direct link between the levels of lead in people's blood and their IQ.
Right. Right.
And he published that research, and he faced actually huge retribution, because the leaded paint industry, because the paint industry used lead for white paint, and it was such a economically superior ingredient to, like, anything else that they could choose, that they were desperate to avoid changing it, and desperate to avoid all the lawsuits that could come from people finding out that we've been spreading,
poison.
Intelligence reducing toxin all over our walls, right? Like, so
they're obviously economically, they don't want change. But
so I learned,
these are scientists.
So I learned that this is actually how it's always happened.
There's a crazy scientist, right?
That there's someone who wants to, that there's someone who wants to stop the bullshit from happening. And
so you're drawing your inspiration from that a little bit.
Yeah.
So do you feel like, so that one happens, and then how did you get into, I guess, like, did you go to lab testing? Because I also know you did a lot on gas station gummies and stuff like that too.
Yeah.
So, like, that was definitely, I saw those threads come through, like, LinkedIn and stuff like that. Because I know a lot of people were getting worried about the hemp coming into Massachusetts, and that kind of got tossed. Now it's removed from Massachusetts. Like, as a chemist, you know how to convert these. You could figure out how to convert those conversions.
That of course, the cannabinoid chemistry is actually pretty interesting.
Have you dabbled? Have you tried just for?
I haven't yet done any real chemistry myself with like on cannabinoids. Let's see. So
You're the perfect
this is
for this, I feel.
No, but part of the reason, part of the reason I founded the nonprofit was because my time at Harvard came to an abrupt end. For some reason, my research advisor started trying to push me out right away, and I found out later it was because the department chair had talked to my research advisor and asked him if someone in his group was doing cannabis research.
And that was you.
Yeah. So what I've been doing was I bought Delta 8 THC. From 3Chi.
Yep.
And I said, all right, this isn't Delta 9 THC, and I brought it into the lab, and I did experiments with it.
Yeah.
And and I didn't get the DEA license.
Right.
Yeah. And for Harvard, I mean, I think that's like a gigantic liability they're not willing to accept.
No.
Right. So at that point, I kind of cottoned on to the idea that that there was like a fundamental problem with like cannabis, like as an industry. And again, it's not cannabis itself, it's because it was new,
Right.
right?
As
But-
well economic incentives.
Yeah, but it's really just the newness of it and the fact that none of us really knows how to do it yet,
Right.
right? Like making a safe commercial cannabis industry is making something that never existed before,
Right.
right? So, yeah, so I cottoned on to the fact that like we had this fundamental problem that's like an engineering problem, which is we were trying to control the results in the store without measuring the results in the store.
What do you mean?
So there's this engineering phrase. I worked like, because my research advisor was a famous scientist and kind of a wacky guy. By the time I was in his research group, there were more engineers than chemists. So, so I learned a lot about how engineers think. And sometimes engineers would say these things like, you only control what you measure. You don't control what you don't measure.
Mm-hmm.
So like if you're depending on the temperature in the room being a certain temperature for your experiment, but you're not measuring the temperature, then you're just like wishing.
You're guessing at that.
Yeah, right? Like, and so in the same way, right? Like we make all these rules, we have everyone test everything, and then they go and they do additional handling, put it into jars, ship it around, leave it on a shelf for a month, and then sell it to someone. And we expect that all of those steps are going to be totally innocent.
Yeah.
Right? We're just wishing, right, that maybe this is going to work, right, without ever checking the end result.
Right.
Ever.
I understand.
That's not how anything has ever been done, right? Like, and it's also weird, right? Like, and I noticed another problem. Like, so, like, I noticed there was like a really fundamental problem there. Right? I noticed another fundamental problem that's different between cannabis and almost every other industry is people in the cannabis industry don't buy cannabis.
What do you mean?
They don't shop in dispensaries. If you're in the cannabis industry, right, you grow weed.
Yeah.
Your friends grow weed,
Everybody grows weed around you.
right?
People are always handing me products.
I have never talked to a dispensary. I've never talked to a cannabis producer who actually went to a dispensary and bought their own product. Right?
Oh,
but that's different.
We have to. We play by. So
Well, good. See, there you go.
So
yeah.
we.
Tell me.
So the way it works is there's a couple different paths to get your product outside of your facility. One is if you own a dispensary, you send it to the dispensary. You can just buy it through the dispensary kind of thing. But we don't own a dispensary.
Yeah.
So we can do some quality control. So under QC rules, we can take up to 5,000 milligrams of various products or whatever, and then quality control it, right? And so we do have a quality control program here. So when we make new batches, we do test things. We do hold them for a little bit also, and then test them later and stuff like that. So we always try to make sure that microbials and stuff like that are accumulating over time. We try to do it. Sometimes we have to use like a 4X machine, which will like speed up the process for microbials specifically. But in order for actually me to consume my own products, I have to go through a dispensary. So I have to.
Oh my goodness.
I actually have to go to the dispensary, a local dispensary, and purchase the products. So yeah, and I take my sleep product all the time because I love CBN. Just really gels well with me.
Yeah.
So like I will go to the local store and buy the sleep product literally every time I run out.
That's interesting, man.
So, but we're a manufacturer. We don't have a dispensary, so we can't just be like, oh, let's ship it to our dispensary, and then we'll have like an employee program or something like that. You know, get their own products. So yes, like again, but we're playing by the books. But there's others I know. Obviously, there's a couple companies who've gotten pinged for like offsite grows and random stuff like that, where they're doing it on the side.
Oh yeah,
with their own employees, like running it even. And it's not under kind of CCC. And that's already been dealt with, I believe, at this point. But there's things like that. And I actually kind of wanted to get to that as well, which is like, do you have any thoughts on consumer safety from that perspective? Because we've heard a lot of the term of inversion as a topic. And I know Caldridoni brought it up on the pod, and then it's brought up a few times since then on the pod. But it really is like external sources, right? And my example that I always go to is, as a chemist, you understand that taking, CBD, converting it to Delta 8 or Delta 9, and then whether you're using chromatography or something else to clean it up
Sure.
You know what I mean? To make it like pure Delta 9 THC. And even little traces of Delta 8 in there, it's mostly under the radar, so no one's really going to be able to tell. So you theoretically could just take raw CBD, convert it into Delta 9 THC in your licensed lab under the CCC, and then put those products into your edibles, for instance.
Yeah.
Like, have you seen any of those things happening, or you know any instances where people are like, because it potentially, if they don't clean it up, again, if it's test,
I have a few thoughts about that. So that conversion of CBD to THC is definitely cheaper than extracting THC from a marijuana.
Yeah.
All right. But the difference in economics is largely because of a difference in regulations, right? So if you converted CBD to THC and then purified it by chromatography and made it as pure as an API, as an active pharmaceutical ingredient, like actually as pure as it should be before you're allowed to sell the product of chemistry, right? Because there are laws about what how pure things need to be when you do chemistry, right? So if they actually, if it was actually all done with proper regulations and controls like that, I don't think it would be so economically competitive.
Right. That makes some kind of sense, because if the laws weren't it wasn't so heavy.
So I have never seen a cannabis product that contained synthetic cannabinoids that didn't have unidentified impurities.
Right.
All right. There's always
something.
So the problem is that this chemistry is not clean. Okay. Like in chemistry, like you have some reactions that are one spot reactions. They take one starting material, they make one product.
And that's it.
And other chemistry reactions are not like that. And the cannabinoid skeleton has a lot of potential for rearrangement. And a lot of those structures are similar in energy. So the moment that you drop in some acid catalyst, you just make some of all
bunch of stuff. Yeah.
Like it just is what happens with that one, I've seen different tricks in research papers that people do to try to avoid like bond migration and scrambling and stuff like that. And none of them works perfect.
Yeah.
And they still do chromatography to purify. So
there's also the isomers, right?
So that's what I'm talking about. I'm talking about all these isomers, all these isomerizations and stereoisomers. I mean,
there's even no flipping of the molecules, because
there are some iso-THC structures that really don't look very much like THC. But it is actually an isomer. It's just like different bond arrangements, like oxygen finds a different carbon, and so it makes totally different rings.
Right.
And
because as long as it attaches to those receptors in your body, you're going to still feel that same effect. Whether you get a bunch of other stuff,
every single one of those other compounds has its own profile of activity that you don't know.
Really.
And also how you respond to cannabinoids depends partly not only on the dose of one compound, but the relative dosing or the ratios of two compounds to each other sometimes can really change how you respond.
Well, yeah, walk me through that, because people are like, because you look at the actual chemical, what do you call them? Diagrams?
Yeah, like molecular structure.
The molecular structure. It's been a minute since my chemistry. Sure. And you look at it and you're like, they're so close looking. Like everything looks very similar. Like CBN and THC are like, there's like, I know they look here and there.
The cannabinoid receptors are very subtle. They're very subtle, and they are not equal. Like every molecule, like even like say like your CB1 receptor, that's like the kind of oversimplified story of like how you get high, right? Is you have CB1 receptors in your brain. They get tickled in a particular spot by the cannabinoid molecule, you feel high, right? Well, that receptor is tickled differently by every cannabinoid molecule. It doesn't have the same effect on it.
Really?
Like different molecules actually trigger different effects from it. So
I've always think of like caffeine and adenosine. I always think of that in my head, where it's just like caffeine, that molecule, when it hits those receptors, it fits just nicely.
Yeah,
Look,
this is
everything
not
set.
such a tight like lock and key. It's more like it's like a sloppy keyhole that lots of keys will sort of work sometimes, right? But you're gonna also like be, so
Right. It's like a Wardo keyhole.
yeah, and the reason is because the like and this is challenging chemistry actually because like these molecules are very hydrophobic.
Yeah.
And so all their interactions are these hydrophobic interactions. They're not these really strong, highly directing electrostatic interactions of like a positive charge being attracted to a negative charge. It's more subtle.
Yeah.
And
So it's kind of like because it's a hydrophobic, just feeling around it.
and so the way these receptors operate is not quite like the norm like kind of the normal understanding of protein receptors of like a lock and key. It's like a more subtle and more complicated
So is that?
thing.
But like, what do you think of compounds like THCP? Right. So that's supposed.
That's a very risky compound.
Yeah.
Because
That's supposed to be what they say 10 times stronger than THC or whatever.
I think that it's going to be very hard for people to, they've I think there was a research paper that said it had about 30 times the binding affinity
Right.
of THC.
That's what I'm getting to. Yeah.
Yeah, and so by that they kind of approximate that. Okay, so it's like that means that's like being 30 times stronger.
Right.
But like again, like really though, that kind of puts it in a different regime of interaction where because like the problem is I think it sticks too tightly
Oh.
to the CB1 or it like sort of sticks too tightly, and so it kind of again that tailors what the interaction is actually like,
Right.
and like what it feels
I
like.
like how you said that though. So every molecule, every compound tickles the CB1 receptor or CB2 receptor, whatever the
Yeah, and sometimes other receptors that we don't all know, like
Right.
because the
PM or
cannabinoids also interact with some of the receptors that are in our immune response and inflammation chain and in the pain transduction pathway. And that's why sometimes cannabinoids, including ones that don't give like a psychoactive effect, can have a massive impact
pain
on some of those processes. Yeah.
So if you were like, I know we're going to talk about consumer safety again, but like if you from just like a curiosity perspective or a passion perspective were to start any research right now, would it be in those kind of fields of like how can we make people maybe do pain management better or how many is there a novel?
Yeah, actually, like that's a good question. It's a funny question to ask me. I am not a medical doctor, and I am not a biologist, and so I have learned.
You can still run a study.
I'm a chemist. Oh, sure. I mean,
I can run a study.
I would have at this point. I'm an experienced enough scientist. I would have something useful to say on about almost any project, right? I would have there would be something I'd be able to help with, but the thing is, I have no lust for medical research. I have no lust for human subjects. That stuff to me is like the most tiring, and it's tiring and difficult in all like the ways that I'm not good at actually, like,
so yeah, I get that. So if you were skipping the study.
So what's exciting to me is to talk to I have a friend who's also an organic chemist, and he and I have been talking for the last couple of weeks about all different kinds of synthetic modifications to the cannabinoid structure that haven't been tried yet. And so like we're
just nerding.
So we're kind of brainstorming that kind of stuff, and that's probably the kind of stuff that I would like most like be excited to try just on a lark.
Is there because I've very limited experience with this. I've bragged on the podcast a few times that I have made Delta 8 myself just because you get some CBD, you put it in a reflux chamber with citric acid, and you get a bunch of isomers of a bunch of crap, basically, right? So, but I do feel like with your background, you could, depending on different solvents or whatever acids you want to use or something like that, you should be able to like manufacture these really novel cannabinoids ultimately. And then with your background, you should be able to clean it up really well as well.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of chemistry out there beyond just acid catalyzed rearrangements,
Right.
Yeah. And it could be real.
Whole big wide field at that point.
Yeah. And that means like many of those are probably going to be drug-like molecules, right? So, in some way or other,
And then that's like pharma API stuff, probably.
yeah.
Could be a whole lab of people just working on all these different arrangements, basically.
Yeah. They could be. Yeah, I think there's going to be there's going to be a huge explosion of that. It's what happens when you open up a new area that's been fenced off for a long time.
Long.
So, and actually, like the fun thing about it is that, like, of course, like lots of the chemists, like, there's decades built of accumulated like chemical methods for doing all kinds of stuff to a molecule like that, and that molecule is actually pretty simple. I mean, well, I know it's medium, but like it's not like a molecule like that would have been a totally solved problem in like the 70s if people had just been allowed to work on it, So it's like the number of just incredibly accessible, like really pretty scientifically like easy things to do that are still haven't been done yet, like makes it like this amazing green pasture, that's been fenced off forever.
So in the near term, I know safety is really important. There's a lot of pessimism around kind of the way things are right now. But overall, are you optimistic or hopeful of the future?
I'm super optimistic, actually. Like, because again, all of this has happened before, and all of it will happen again
with friction. There's a bit of friction.
Yeah. But like, I feel like we're making progress. I mean,
what's a big thing you guys want solved right now, then? Say, maybe speaking on behalf of the ICS.
I mean, as sort of like an immediate like kind of next step in policy is like just as an incremental thing. I want QR codes that give people the COA. I think that we need that part of the system to be that simple.
Metric released all that stuff.
Yeah,
and asking Metric for access to this stuff, we still haven't got a response from them.
Yeah,
so we're still waiting
push it
with QR codes. All right, we email them probably like, I don't know, I have to talk about production director.
Yeah,
at least once a month at this point, or once every couple of weeks. We're just like, hey, give us access to this thing. We want to start implementing it.
Yeah, definitely keep pushing them because
I think COAs are fundamental. Like COAs are a fundamental part of the process.
You offer the service, then help your clients use it. All right.
Yeah,
like that's it.
So that's a big one. And then maybe in the more medium term, like
but like
is it this legislature?
What I really want to I mean, like the really big problem that I see is pretty systematic. Like there's a huge regulatory capture problem in cannabis regulation. Again, the problem is like who's hiring in cannabis? It's like big companies, right? Like sure you are, right? Or growing companies. For the people working in the regulatory agency, thinking about their careers, right? They're underpaid government servants right now, but they're learning how regulations work. That's going to make them really, and how the government works. It's going to make them really valuable to some big companies later, right?
Right.
As long as they don't piss them off right now.
That economic incentive on the individual level.
Yeah. And so like there has been, certainly in Massachusetts, but I suspect in other states too, there has been massive deference to some companies. And I recently published an article describing special favors that were done for some licensees by the executive director of the Cannabis Control Commission and special punishments doled out to other licensees.
Wow.
Right? So, there are an awful lot of rumors among Massachusetts licensees of different kinds of coercion from their assigned inspector. Right.
We've heard stories like that.
Yeah. Everyone's got stories.
Everybody's got stories about that.
Everyone's got stories. They're really quiet about how they talk about it, right? But like,
because everybody wants retaliation.
Yeah, right.
We're scared.
The fear of retaliation is huge in this.
So we don't. I don't believe when they talk about.
Yes, and I said, yeah, right. Like, yeah, I know, right? I know, right? And like, believe me, when I published an article recently,
talking twice about my belief.
Yeah, with regulatory capture and retaliation in the title,
you didn't get some friendly fan mail.
There was retaliation again. It's amazing.
That's wild.
Yeah. So like, there's a really like dollars to donuts there has been kickbacks in that place. All right. Like, you don't have that many of those conditions, right, without someone getting a payoff. I mean, I explained it.
But you don't have actual proof of this.
I don't have proof of the kickbacks, but I have proof of all the other activities, right? And I think
kind of
well, at this point, like we've seen, like there's a Massachusetts State Auditor's report that says that every one of their human resources investigations done in their like first 5 years was done improperly, right? And then we've heard about like the abuse of the human resources processes for cover-ups there, right?
Right.
I mean, we have all that, all that evidence is actually there.
Record.
Yeah, all that evidence is actually there, but it's just not being, people are slow to take it really seriously and get what it really
who
means.
takes it? Who do you think a responsible party in this one to take it seriously? Because the license holders aren't speaking up because of retaliation.
No, yeah, right, exactly.
But like, who else
Isn't that the problem, right?
Right.
Yeah, you need the civic sector.
Right.
Right? Like the industry really needs the Institute of Cannabis Science.
Yeah.
Right? Like nobody else is really
Say the things that.
Yeah, to say the things that you're afraid to say, right? But also so that when the regulators hear it, they know it's not just someone trying to stab their competition.
Right, exactly. It's not just a stick in the mud who's just
right. Yeah, because that's where a lot of their complaints come from right now, is someone trying to get their competition, right? So I really don't. I mean, like, the reason we have safe products in other marketplaces in America is because of organizations like Consumer Reports, and
that's a third party private company.
Yep, it's a nonprofit. That was my inspiration. That's why I founded a nonprofit. I was like, well, Consumer Reports is a nonprofit. I want to do like that.
Consumer Reports.
That was my naive picture in my head.
Yeah, you gotta start somewhere.
So yeah. So like, right, and I don't know. Like, I just did some Wikipedia level research in the past week on Ralph Nader again. Just reminding myself of like what he did that actually made him famous originally, right? And he was famous because he published a book titled "Unsafe at Any Speed."
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And you know what happened when he published that book? The next year they passed a law, right, that updated a bunch of the safety rules for cars, right? But you know what else happened? GM retaliated at him.
What happened to him?
They hired private investigators to follow him, and they tried to entrap him with prostitutes.
Did they? Yeah, that sounds like a separate book in itself.
I know, isn't it crazy? But this is actually what happens all the time.
Right.
Like, that's their money, and that's how they make it, man.
That's with their money. Yeah.
Yeah, right. That's why they're doing this.
But do you feel like there is good intentions for the most part?
Oh, absolutely. See, I think that they're well-intended people, and I think there are good people there. But it's been kind of a factional place.
You mean like cliques?
There's sort of been factions or groups or little fiefs in there, right? It seems like. So that's kind of what the stories make it sound like at this point, right? So like, it's been a real challenge for some of the people who do want to make a difference to like push stuff forward and make progress.
Are you in favor of the I call it receivership, CC? Are you in favor of something like that? Do you think it has to be torn down and rebuilt, or do you think, how do you modify that? Can it be salvaged?
I think that what you have to do when you have a problem, like when you have a regulatory, any kind of a organ of the state that ends up with like corruption kind of problems, you've got to expose it, explain why it happened, and come up with a plan for how you stop it. Come up with some rule or some idea of like what's going to prevent it from happening next time, right?
Right.
And I think if you try to cover it up, I think there's always going to be festering problems. Like you're going to continue having a cover up culture, right? Like and cover up cultures are just not accountable. I mean, and they're not safe. All right. Like I've talked, again, I'm pretty big in the safety kind of community. Like when there's a safety officer around, I like talk to that guy for a while, right? Because that's like my buddy, right?
Yeah.
Like, I talked to a guy just earlier this week. He used to work at a mine, at an open pit copper mine, and he said, every morning, yep, they have like all the division chiefs get together, and there's this meeting of dozens of people, and they talk about the safety stuff and whatever happened the day before and earlier that week that were like incidents, right? And it was very important that if anybody had made a mistake, or if something had an accident, anything, or a close call, then they're required the next morning to show up at that meeting and say what happened and what they learned, right? And it sounds really painful, right? Like, you could see why people would avoid it.
I was going to say, it sounds painful, but it also seems like...
when you have that culture, then here's what happens, right? So this guy's telling me the story. He says, so one day, right, like they had they come off the highway, they go on the mine road. There's this part where the mine road actually switches and they drive on the left. And one time he messed up the switch and he came nose to nose with his own supervisor. He didn't hit him. He didn't hit their vehicle, but and it was so embarrassing. He was dreading that meeting the next morning where he has to have to explain that he forgot to switch sides, right? Well, he says that he did it, and then 5 different people tell him about the first time they did that.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the culture that you need. That's why.
Right.
Right? It's not because embarrassing this guy is going to be helpful and instructive, right? That's not the point at all. In fact, the point is to make it not embarrassing.
Right.
Right? So that we can all just say, hey, I had a really close call today. All right. I don't know if you've ever, let your tape measure go sliding back in there. But today, my tape measure had a little ding in it, and it cut my glove right open when I did that.
Right.
So really watch out for that, right?
It's not an embarrassment. It's about safety.
Yeah. It's a different culture, right? Like,
That's the culture.
and I realized that was the culture I'd already been practicing my whole life, because like when I was in the chemistry lab, and like when I was in the chemistry lab, like if I was the safety officer, like I would speak up in our lab meetings every week, in our weekly lab meetings, and I would talk about whatever safety incident, including if I blew something up, like, which I did. One time I had this accident with a separatory funnel. It was a really big separatory funnel. And I hadn't quite neutralized all the acid. There was still a little acid down in the very bottom triangle there. It just doesn't mix as much. It doesn't always mix as much as you think, right?
Right.
And then I shook it, and and there's bicarbonate all in the top part, right? And the thing, I mean, it just burst out of my hand.
Right.
I got covered in the liquid. It broke a piece of glass and spilled that had mercury in it, and spilled mercury around my hood. It was a big mess, right? And I remember the liquid. I was doing a reaction with parole, and parole is one of these horrible organic compounds that just lives to die. In like the moment you expose it to the atmosphere, it starts turning to brown shit.
Yeah.
So like after a day, my whole lab coat turned brown.
Wow.
Right, from it, right? And like there was actually this splash pattern on the floor with these 2 big gaps where my feet were, right? Because I'd like blocked the pattern, right? So what I did was I brought the lab coat into the meeting, and I said, so this is why I wear my lab coat every time I'm in.
Right, exactly.
And I say, and this is what happened, and this is who was talking to me while I did this, and why I was distracted enough.
Right.
And this is what I'm going to do to not do that again, right? But I was like, at that point, a senior guy in like a separatory funnel accident,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's so, like, who would, like, I mean, like, how many,
I get it. Yeah.
like, it's the stupidest thing, right?
Right.
Like,
silly.
but when you have that environment where everyone feels cool with that,
Yeah.
then you don't find any weird shit in the lab anymore. Where it's like, why did someone leave this thing like this, right?
Exactly.
Because everyone's accountable, everyone's used to it. Like if someone has a problem with
Appreciate
something,
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think, and I feel like going back to that mind story also, like that's when you breed a culture like that, it becomes not about embarrassment. It comes out to just making everybody safe at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And so like,
So
you'll have to be that stick in the mud at some point. I think that is a really important role for safety
yeah.
because I can imagine, especially in the current cannabis landscape in the industry, being like, go away, Jeff. Like, stop. Like, I don't want to hear about all the bad stuff that happened the day before or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, like, just leave me alone. I'm going to just work today. But you're saying that's a crucial feature that should be built into the system.
Yeah, right. I mean, I think what I'm saying is that whole problem that we're having right now is kumbaya cannabis. And right, and we're all coming. Like if you say you're a scientist, then you're a scientist.
Right. If you could just be a scientist.
Right? I have a weed company now. I grow weed. It's never going to go out of business.
Yeah.
Right?
There's some realities.
And the regulators were the same way. They were like, so we're going to set this whole thing up at, at pace, right? Super complicated, like this is, it's like the most complicated thing in the world to regulate because there's hardware, there's plants, there's habit forming substances, there's chemistry, there's food.
Yeah.
Like
that's the stuff that scares me because even
like literally you could not make an agency like these things fall under, they're like 5 categories of things, right? It's usually 5 regulatory agencies, right?
we went to our local town when we were first coming in here, and we went to the town board of health, and we are like, hey, just so you know, we're starting up. We'd love for you to come by, so we can get so the board of health can kind of look at our setup to make sure we're doing everything correctly. And that person was just like, oh, that's not our purview.
Yeah.
The CCC kind of owns the food part of this. And I go, oh, but you're the board of health of my local town. Shouldn't you know what's going on in here? And they were kind of just like, listen, like it was also kind of pandemic time. So they were kind of, we got bigger fish to fry.
Well,
but
one of the problems is, right, like all these other government agencies, they're like, all these, they don't want to they don't want another thing to do.
Right.
They don't want more work.
Right. That's right.
So they're like, okay, well, we'll let that all be CCC, right?
Right.
Is the CCC, like, how are they going to hire all the people they need
all these
to be experts on all this stuff, right? So but that kumbaya cannabis thing, it goes even there, right? Because like their whole problem was that they try to do all this stuff for the first time ever, and it's massively complicated. And then they all wanted a gold star at the end, and to say that all of it went perfect, that none of them ever made a mistake.
Right.
Right. Well, do you know an entrepreneur who didn't make a mistake?
No, I've never heard of that before. Yeah. Yeah, we make mistakes daily here.
Yeah, right. It's like when you're making something new.
Yeah.
So that's been the
right.
And
that's the thing.
It sounds like a little thing that oh, Jeff, you're just talking about some minor little cultural difference, right? Like that's the whole ball game.
That's everything.
Yeah, when you have people who need to be perfect,
right,
and need to be seen as perfect in charge of something, that's dangerous.
Yeah.
Right? It's actually really dangerous.
Yeah. With no checks on it either.
Yeah.
Is that so? If you were to, as we start to wrap a little bit, is this if you were to give any advice to a licensed operator today, would it be, because we understand some of this stuff, like obviously there's OSHA regulatory bodies on the actual staff safety side, and then on the consumer safety side, we do practice like HACCP and stuff like that. Is there any one kind of big takeaway that you'd say to any licensed operator today? If you're about to do something, do this.
I would say that if anybody who wants to start in cannabis today, they should, before they start their business, they should spend some time really learning about all the compliance and controls in the pharmaceutical industry and the food industry. All right. And if they understand that stuff, then they'll be better prepared to run their business. Because I think the problem I see is that a lot of people in the weed business, they thought that knowing how to grow weed in their garage was going to be a great qualification for starting their business, right? That they can't do fucking paperwork.
Right.
Right. They can't do compliance.
Right.
They don't keep track. Before. Right. And and think about the fact, and buy instruments and measure what the fuck you're making. Okay. Otherwise you don't know what you're doing. Right. And you look to a practice chemist like me, like I think it's like I think people look stupid.
Yeah.
When it's right. Like if I do a chemical reaction, I told you already, right? If I do a chemical reaction, I don't measure the results and see if it actually and check the purity
Right.
of the compound that I got. How am I going to go forward? Like what's going to happen next, right?
I absolutely nailed it there, because I do feel like the best companies that I've ever interacted with are constantly measuring the results.
Yeah,
You have to.
you need
You absolutely have to.
like if if you're sending something out to an external lab for an answer that you have no idea what it's going to be,
That's true. It's a lot of what happens.
I just don't know. I just don't know what you're doing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. If we were
And start taking responsibility for for what your consumers are getting now. Okay. All right. Because the problem these guys have, right? That like you mentioned the compression, right? None of these guys are prepared for this kind of a ball game. All right. For the entire history of weed as they know it, the way that you sold weed was you said, I have weed.
right.
Right. Like it was always a seller's market. It has been a seller's market in America like forever, right? It's not a seller's market now,
Right.
right? Now it's a buyer's market. So for the first time ever, you've got to care about your actual customers, right? Like that's our money,
Mhm.
right? That's building your businesses, right? You're going to have to start actually valuing us.
And it starts with safety.
Yeah. And
If you put out inferior products, or if you put out products that are unsafe, you're gone from the market itself.
yeah. Or if you say, hey, man, look, cannabis buds, they all have different THC level. Like, of course I sent the very best one to get tested.
Right. The top.
But,
cola.
like you can't blame me if your jar has buds that are lower in THC. Like, that's just the normal variation. That's not my problem. No, actually, fuck you, homie. That is your problem. You put the number on the jar, you own that number, right? If you know something, if you know that you're putting buds in there with a different value, that's fraud. It's disrespecting your consumer. Point blank, man. Like, that's a point blank, like, fuck you, homie. Like,
I can respect that.
yeah, like,
That's
if you know, like, yeah, right? That's the whole point.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like, don't tell me what I don't understand about variation or something, like, I'll tell you what you don't understand about selling products with numbers on the package in America,
Right.
right? We got laws about that.
Right. Absolutely. I appreciate that. Any last words, any big shout outs you want to give out to any like ICS or anything like that? People can join.
I am going to direct people to www.cansci.org. All right, that's our website. Find some interesting content there. In particular, you should take a look at the tasting testing section. All right, those are product reviews I've written, and I think they're kind of entertaining. I always test the product as well, and so you can.
To see if it matches.
It's a little bit of and it's kind of like a little bit of edutainment, all right, because you'll learn a little bit about science and even some statistics and weed, but also like you'll get to see how much when I smoke weed, I don't care that much about like the precise THC level, right? Like is the experience, that's not really the whole experience, dude.
Sure.
Like it's way more than that, right? So yeah, definitely check that out. I want to shout out my board members. I've been practicing this.
Okay.
All right. The board of the Institute of Cannabis Science is Kate Averick, Kirk Berry, Michael Denault, Carl Giannoni, Evan Friedman, Morgan Kiefer, Aaron Kirk, John Nathan, and Anna Schwabe. And the manager is Kara Crab Burnham, and she's amazing as a manager. If you have noticed that it seems like the Institute of Cannabis Science is more active and doing more in the last 6 months, what you're actually noticing is that for the last 6 months, Kara has worked for us. So if you want to demonstrate your own marked increase in activity and visibility, hiring her on a part-time basis is a great way to do that.
Shout out to Kara.
Yeah.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
Yeah, and my whole board is amazing. They are putting up with me as I learn for the first time ever how to chair a board. And they're really patient.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's amazing. I appreciate those shout outs. Many friends on that list. So thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you very much.